You were never meant to be remembered. Not by your bloodline, not by their archives, not by the system. The day you were born, 33 veiled figures gathered in a chamber beneath the surface of the world you think you know. Not presidents, not politicians, but elders, scribes of forgotten empires, descendants of those who write history with ink made from lost souls. They performed a ritual called erasure. The first word to vanish from their scrolls was your name, because you weren't in their script. You weren't supposed to return. You weren't supposed to wake up, but you did. And Elon Musk, watching the signals, reading the shifts, saw you. He saw what they tried to bury. He read what flickered back into existence. And when he realized who you are, he wept. And then, quietly, he said, "I'm sorry we didn't find you sooner." You're still here, however. What does that say? It indicates that their ritual was unsuccessful. It indicates that your identity's seal has broken. You've started to recall bits and pieces of your past, including visions in your sleep, intuitive knowings, and that weird pang in your chest when you look at old symbols. It's memories returning from a place deeper than time. And it's not a coincidence. Instead of being afraid of what you would say, the Council of 33 was afraid of what you might awaken. It was worse than their intention to murder you. They sought to delete your soul's coordinates from every spiritual grid, implant you into loops of distraction, and disperse your identity across spurious lives. However, something went wrong. A tremor swept over their ranks. Others attributed it to a mistake in their harmonic coding, while others referred to it as divine influence. However, a few were aware of the reality. There was no way to prevent your return. Their systems faltered the instant you started to doubt everything: food, time, symbols, lineages. The barrier is weakening, which is why you received this message. Additionally, the records they buried in Geneva's catacombs are now illuminating once again. Vibration alone is decrypting the scrolls they vowed never to read. The Council is now convening once again, this time to contain, rather than to eradicate. Although they are aware that they cannot stop you, they think they can hold you up long enough for the gate to permanently close, and for the memory of your true identity to fade into obscurity once again. They didn't foresee that you would hear this in time, however. The erasure chamber beneath the Vatican's sub-basements, deep below the archives and public tours, lies a room that very few people have ever seen. Without windows, clocks, or cameras, time bends there without being touched by light. Entry is restricted to individuals who have been admitted into the 33's ancient ritual. Additionally, they arrive as a single voice, agenda, and goal: erasure, rather than as separate people. Before you could even pronounce your name, it reverberated through the room in a whisper, in Hebrew, Latin, and codes that current linguists are unaware of. The predictions that were found from shattered stone tablets under Lake Van, and those that were locked behind obsidian vaults in Petra, were the ones that named you, not the popular ones. Their oldest instruments shuddered the instant your soul frequency shook into this world. The motion to remove you off the grid was made without any discussions or disputes. Nor demolish, nor kill. That would simply put one at danger of revival. No, they decided on erasure, since it has greater power than death to forget someone. A table composed of a black stone that was not of this world was surrounded by 12 concentric rings of ancient calligraphy within that chamber. An orb, not made of glass or metal, but of memory itself, hung over it. Within it whirled every name ever tied to the chronology of Earth. The vote then started. 33 carved seals, 33 hands uplifted. As the sphere rotated, your name was cut off and buried in the space behind it. Nevertheless, it pulsed in some way. The youngest member hesitated. He remained silent. He simply gazed at the empty space where your name had vanished. And in that quiet, he sensed an impossibility, a warmth that came from inside him rather than from the orb. standing against a council similar to theirs. He saw your face, not as you are today, but as you were in another era. He didn't say anything that day, but after that, he started to doubt everything. Something has broken their seal, which is why the council is now trying to get back together after all these years. Someone is keeping in mind. It's not just you either, because there is a flaw, a single misplaced etching, hidden in that chamber's hallowed geometric pattern. The walls are already flickering, and old traditions constantly forewarn that, when the Chosen One walks again, the room without windows shall collapse into light. The identity encryption process. The encryption started long before you started to wonder about your history. Suppressing the memory of the anomaly, you, was the common goal of documents concealed in subterranean data centers, forgotten drawers in European cathedrals, and under ancient Masonic lodges. These files pulsed with quantum locks, thus, they weren't your typical files. They were written using ink made from shattered stones that could only be discovered under old temples, and that formerly vibrated in tune with the harmonics of the heavens. The seals changed your mind's energy grid. They weren't only symbolic. A distinct layer of your awareness was targeted by each of the 33 seals. One impeded your ancestral recollection, another interfered with the purity of your dreams, and many of them warped your idea of who you were, transforming divine intuition into self-doubt. These were carefully crafted after examining hundreds of realities, where your presence sparked a worldwide awakening. They weren't arbitrary. Your potential was a prophecy they worried may yet come true, not merely a danger. One of the papers, however, then leaked, tracing an unrelated satellite interference pattern in Prague. A veteran intelligence expert happened to stumble onto it. He first believed it to be just a schematic until he saw your name hidden under many levels of symbolic encryption. Your birth coordinates were mentioned next to a seal that said 33 Void Protocol. A week later, the analyst disappeared, but not before sending the encrypted data to a Portuguese monk who was one of the Essene's few surviving relatives. Before the data damaged themselves, the monk decrypted a single line. The final seal will not hold if the Nazarene awakens. He immediately recognized the code. Yeshua, a Nazarene, had once predicted that a generation would be blind until the hour of recollection. He had issued a warning about seals created by councils, vying for control over spirits rather than by individuals. You were always that voice. His words were removed from the majority of contemporary literature, but one obscure manuscript, preserved in a mountain cave, included a last caution. The one they tried to forget shall carry remembrance in their voice. Stranger things are occurring today, however, as some of the 33 seals have started to vibrate in resonance once again. This isn't because the council approved of it. Rather, it's because someone else has started to open them. The ancient star and the algorithm, an archaic algorithm, was operated on secret servers hidden underneath the oldest cities long before you were born, before your lungs ever touched the air of this planet. These weren't public systems. They weren't mass-market astrological predictions. The descendants of individuals who formerly scanned the heavens using memories handed down via blood rather than telescopes computed this precision-grade predictive coding. They had no desire for wealth, rank, or notoriety. They were trying to find you. The frequency released from a star cluster concealed inside the constellation known to few as Asha-Sel's Belt, older than recorded human time, was the moment your spirit decided to re-enter. Modern observatories cannot see the flash that ignited, but equipment designed to detect vibration rather than light were able to record it. Within the Council's watch grid, the frequency raised a red flag. Something that shouldn't have returned had. Your birth was tracked, recorded, and sealed. It wasn't a random event. The doctor briefed, the hospital watched. However, you were silent. At first, you didn't mention odd things. You just had a different feeling. You saw symbols where others did not. as control mechanisms, the same geometric patterns they had spent years encoding into your surroundings started to respond to you by flickering, warping, and even shattering. There was a problem. A teacher was sufficiently upset by your drawings at the age of 7 to file a report. When you were 13, you had a dream about a city that is carved on ancient Atlantean tablets, but isn't seen on any map. And when you were 19, you passed a church window and almost passed out because the stained glass there reflected your soul's memories and wasn't simply glass. They saw you, and you saw it for a moment. You hadn't remembered yet, but the council knew you were starting to mess with their chronology. Under layers of identification, you hadn't uttered the real name. At that point, they attempted to fix it. A little change in your surroundings, chilly pals, and the emergence of doubts. You searched, nevertheless. You inquired. And the original algorithm started to break down with every query. In the sky over Antarctica, the same spot where ancient traditions say the last gate was concealed, the same light that signaled your homecoming is starting to pulse once again. The name that is unchangeable. Yeshua discussed identity in addition to love and truth in the lesser-known passages of the Gospel of the Hidden Path. Once, under a fig tree, Jesus turned to his followers and said, "The day will come when even your name shall not be your own. It will be traded in the temples of false light." Many of them didn't get what he was saying, but they weren't the intended audience. They were intended for you. Beyond his own age, Yeshua imagined a future in which identities would be collected for control rather than honor, and names would be treated like statistics. He was aware that there would be invisible and silent committees that would try to take names before they ever had a chance to bloom. The most powerful souls will be singled out before birth, he said, and their spiritual signatures would be altered, replicated, or removed completely. However, he said, what is written by the Father cannot be erased by the hands of men. For this reason, you were not completely erased by the Council of 33. The portion of you that wasn't inscribed on earth was underestimated. The heavenly inscription embedded in your soul was the one layer they dreaded the most, yet they were unable to alter it despite erasing records, rewriting histories, and corrupting ancestral data. In one of Yeshua's lost parables, an unnamed visitor enters a city where all documents have been destroyed. Even if the city attempts to ignore him, his words force its barriers to crumble. Not due to loudness, but rather to recognition. The memory they attempted to forget is carried in his voice. That echo has come back, as it is said. They knew not the name, but they feared its echo. You've sensed it in the pauses between sentences, in the eyes of people you don't know, but who seem to recognize you, in songs, dreams, and symbols that keep coming up just to remind you. There was a time when people feared you and couldn't pronounce your name. The algorithms that govern your existence are now malfunctioning. The databases that were used to dilute your essence are starting to become corrupted. Because your genuine name, your divine identity, is starting to vibrate once more, not in the memory of the world. The seals they carved are losing their integrity. The serpent seal and the hidden lineage. The Council of 33 shifted to containment after realizing that deletion would not suffice. By ancestry, not by force. Instead of using a family tree, they used frequency lineage to track your spiritual origins. Those unseen soul threads traveled through lost lineages, dispersed over countries, and merged into tribes that history purposefully obscured. You were buried in a family, not just put in one. Your line was picked because it was obscure. Its records changed. Its origins misrepresented. Marriages were misfiled. Burials were mislabeled. And any document that might connect your mind to ancient prophecy was broken. Before the council removed your last name from holy registers and incorporated it into the names of shepherds, laborers, and lost crafts, it echoed through the corridors of ancient libraries like a heavenly code. They wanted you concealed from yourself as much as from the outside world. They created spiritual genealogies that were never made public in hidden rooms under Lisbon and Alexandria. These charts followed light, soul energy, and auric vibration throughout generations rather than land or income. And on one chart, one strand, yours, glowed brighter than the others. A soul that has made several appearances under various aliases, but always with the same disturbance, truth. They dispatched the architects of quiet at that point. They were experts in psychic interference and architects of amnesia, not killers or witches. They used techniques like implanting trauma at significant life events to splinter memory, placing subliminal signals around you to cause confusion, and warping time perception to the point where you are unable to trust your own instincts. But your blood continued to murmur in spite of everything. You began to recall things that no one had taught you, such names you had never heard of before, and patterns in the sky. You were attracted to places your forefathers were said to have never been, and languages you had never learnt. You found those threads, even if you weren't intended to. The fact that your memory is ancestral, rather than just cerebral, is what most alarmed them. Your bones, breath, and quiet are all imprinted with it. They're resurrecting the lost bloodlines they buried you in. Tombs are reverberating, and ancient names are resurfacing. And there's one name that shines brightly in the dark in the next forgotten archive, hidden under the sands of a city lost to time. Not even among themselves do they freely discuss it. The prophecy is too detailed and too risky. Solely in houses where symbols are etched onto wooden beams and discussed solely behind soundproof walls, and in clandestine meetings of old lineages, can whispers of it endure. It describes a person whose DNA would include a vibrational code powerful enough to break spiritual confinement grids and defy ancestral rules. Your birth year, soul frequency, and signature in dream space were all accurate, even though the person's name was never recorded. Everything was there. The triple lineage child, a bloodline previously associated with the Order of the Black Flame, stored in untranslated text concealed behind a fake wall long before your corpse even made it to Bavaria. The oldest person in the queue fell to the ground when he read it, when it was found in 1973. In addition to prophecy, it included the following instruction. If the child of triple lineage returns, the 33 must erase or be erased. 3 ancient lines, Atlantean, Semitic, and Sumerian, are hybridized in your DNA, making it complex. Centuries ago, that mixture was believed to have vanished, dissolved into the human river. However, it was purposefully revived by your blood, not by science or surgery. A weird person whose genetic makeup matched a vibration stated in the first oral Torah, before Moses ever walked, was described by a rabbi in Jerusalem who previously interpreted pieces of the Zohar. The rabbi said, "This one will not need teaching. This one will remember." A week later, he vanished, but not before one sentence was discovered written on his last page. "The name shall return through the code." Yeshua alluded to this same lineage when he said, "Before Abraham was, I am." He wasn't talking about ego. He was talking about origin, a soul that is not bound by one timeline, but is connected by divine pattern, which is now present in your very cells. You've begun to synchronize your dreams with others. It seems familiar to strangers. Places you've never been to cause such strong déjà vu that your pulse races. That's code recognition, not chance. The prophecy was always about what your presence would open, not what you did. The vaults constructed to hold the DNA signature are now beginning to shake. The unseen walk and the serpent seal. A folder with only a symbol, a snake coiling around an inverted triangle, is hidden in a sublayer of the Vatican's digital archive. It is not online and isn't even included among the secret files. No country of origin, no date, and no name. However, inside it, encrypted using vibrational cipher and encoded in symbols older than Latin, is a file that contains pieces of your wiped life. They sealed your records, not destroyed them. The serpent's seal is energy rather than physical. It was created by spiritual engineers in the Babylonian era and passed down to covert priesthoods whose goal was to use holy knowledge as a weapon rather than to spread it. Only anomalies, souls who returned without their will, or those had the power to bring down systems just by existing, were subject to this seal. In the end, just 7 were marked in this manner. The 8th is you. Once sealed, neither government nor ancestor systems could access your data. It was hard even for your own spirit to remember. Not only did the snake bind, but it also confused, looped identities via mirrors, created spiritual decoys, and diverted your inner compass with echoey voices and false lights that mimicked intuition. However, fissures have already started to appear. 2 months ago, a geomagnetic pulse inadvertently activated a piece of your file that was embedded on a forgotten server in Greenland. The algorithm forwarded it to a linguist in Estonia who studies phonetic harmonics because it thought the data was unimportant. Before the file erased itself, he deciphered only one sentence. The 8th shall walk unseen until the coil breaks. What does it mean? The seal of the snake was not meant to endure. It was intended to buy time. Time for the Council of 33 to complete the identity framework that would change the course of history. However, their structure is not complete. They are now encircled by the snake they called forth.